Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hotline League. And this is the NA Greater Than EU edition. That's right. Last night, spoiler alert. I'm sorry if it's been like almost 24 hours, and like the next game's going to play. You just got to know, it's a situation where North America Team Liquid has triumphed in a 2-1 series over Europe. They've already got the coping mechanisms coming out, and but it's going to be what we're talking about tonight. But we are one night into First Stand. There's more matches tonight, including another North America match kicking us off, or not kicking us off. Oh, no. North America plays... Oh, wow, we have 3 matches tonight. I misread the calendar, I think because of time zone stuff. Whatever, either way, we've got North America playing this morning. If you're going to be East Coast, you should tune in because it'll be at probably 7 a.m., 6 a.m. there at that time. Whatever. It's going to be great. My guest for the night is not here, but my co-host is Cubby. Cubby, how's it going?
Doing great, Travis. Excited to be on board, and should be a good episode.
Yeah. We did have a guest, just in case people are like, why don't they have a guest for a international event? We did have a guest that was lined up, and then they canceled at 5:10 p.m., and we start the show at 7. So despite some attempts, mostly from Cubby, thankfully, very nice of him to do this, to try to land us a guest for the evening. It is just the two of us, but that is okay because there's so much to talk about. You really only need the two of us to talk about it, as we're going to be diving into things like First Stand. We'll talk a little bit about the Double Lift team and their adventures or misadventures or whatever you want to call it. And then we will also be talking about some other fun little things that have happened in the past week. But do want to give a big shout out to PrizePicks and NZXT for sponsoring the show. Want to thank them so much for this. We'll be talking more about them later on in the show, but please check the links below if you'd like to. And if you are interested in playing PrizePicks during First Stand, please make sure that you sign up with code Travis. Doing so is a very, very, very great way to help the show. One of the best ways to do so is to sign up and make that first time deposit. So thank you to everybody for supporting our sponsors, PrizePicks and NZXT. Anywho, Cubby, how you been this past week?
Good. OQs were really fun. I would love to. I know that we're going to talk about First Stand for the vast majority of this show. Already pulling some takes to talk about First Stand, but there was some stuff going on with Double Lift's team, whether or not they're going to compete. I do want to take one call about that. Besides that, OQs were really exciting. I have co-streaming rights. I've just been red zoning it, so shout out to all the players that kind of let me just piggyback off their POV. We've been watching like team perspective for a lot of it, so it's been really fun to hear comms on like what the teams are up to. And we had a match. It was a best of 5 between 2 teams that no one had getting through this OQ, as it was only 3 teams get through out of the 64. No one expected either of these teams to be in a position to even have a best of 5 to go play to win, as it was between 10 players who have never had a starting slot in NACL. I think Barrick is a player that subbed. But anyway, one of the teams won. It went to 5. It was really fun. It wasn't the cleanest series on the planet, but the tournament's been really fun for anyone that has been tuning in.
Yeah, do you want to explain what this is? Because I think there's some people in chat that's like, what's an OQ?
Yeah, so OQ equals open qualifiers. There are 3 NACL slots. That would be the Tier 2 League and LTA North. 3 slots are open. So 64 teams played a best of 3 double elimination bracket, and the 3 teams get out in the end. And where we're at right now is there are 10 teams left, and they are playing for one slot, as 2 slots have been decided. One is Double Lift's team near Airport, and then another one, I'm going to blank on the team name, it was like AMI, but Fine Mini is the mid laner, and he was streaming his perspective, and that's how we were spectating the game. And it was quite the banger. So yeah, that was my weekend. Besides that, I saw Mickey 17, which I highly recommend. It was without spoiling it, I laughed more than I thought I would going into it.
Okay. But I was trying to decide if I would want it. I was a little worried because I felt like it had a little bit of like sci-fi body horror type thing. I don't want to say body horror. That's maybe weird. But like there's a brand of sci-fi that is a little grotesque to me, and I was worried that that's what this is.
This is not grotesque. at
Okay.
all. I guess minorly so, but as someone that like doesn't like horror films and that being grotesque, it didn't offend me whatsoever in that category. So
Gotcha.
I thought it was a fun watch. Yeah, recommend it based on that.
I hear some people say that there's some. Now, obviously, this always happens when we start the show, and not beforehand. There's some buzzing, maybe. So please let me know if people are hearing that, and I will try to test. Sometimes it just ends up being like a random cable or something. Either way, I'm glad to hear that you did that and that you enjoyed it. I've had a pretty quiet week myself, which is kind of nice actually, because I am.
Yeah.
I should say this at the start of the show, and I know I mentioned it to you, but I guess we can follow up and confirm that the time is good. But I am traveling to Florida on Thursday in order to go to a wedding that is happening this weekend for a good friend of mine and former roommate. And so going out there to support her. Congratulations to Sloan. But I will be out of town, and I will be in Florida. So I'll be watching First Stand remotely. But, well, I guess it's always remote. I'll be watching First Stand not from the enjoyment and comfort of my own apartment. But also that means that we might be in a situation, we definitely will be in a situation where the show will not happen on Monday next week because I will be flying back on Monday. Unfortunately, that was just the way in which the flights worked out, unless I wanted to spend $1 bajillion. So I'll be doing that. We'll probably do the show on Tuesday if that works with Cubby's schedule.
Okay. I can make that work. I actually might be remote for that,
Okay.
as I have a friend who has a bachelor party that is by next weekend
Everybody's
after
getting
First Stand.
married.
Yeah, and I'm going out a little bit early because my folks are out there, so I'm gonna spend a day or two with them. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
But it should be good. I should be able to. Yeah, we'll make it work.
All right. Well, still working on that audio issue, folks. I'm not sure what's going on, but I will try to resolve that as best as I can. We'll just keep an eye on my Twitter or Discord for information on when things are going to go down next week. But hopefully we can do it. Any good time for everybody. Either way, so I've got that going on, going to Florida this week, and then did just want to shout out for anybody who lives in the Bay Area. I'm going to be going to MXP Santa Clara next month, which is a Magic the Gathering event in the Bay on April 18th to the 20th. So if anybody is around that weekend and wants to hang out and play some Magic, I will be at that event. It's a pretty good event, so should be a good time. All right, let's get into
up where that spot is, at least the convention center. I lived in San Fran for a bit. I don't know if I've given you my food recommendations from out there.
No, I did not even know.
I got a couple good ones. Yeah,
Okay,
I spent my last
let me
semester
know.
of college there. Yeah.
You should definitely let me know. Okay, let's talk a little bit about League of Legends. So I know we talked about the OQ situation, but what else interesting has happened this past week, Cubby?
Well, First Stand, we are off of the first night of First Stand. It is the new international tournament in Riot's schedule. Of course, we have 3 splits now. This is split 1. It is Fearless. There are 5 teams. The winner from the new, 5 regions. Those 5 teams went out to Korea to compete in Lowell Park. And, just as expected, we had a caller actually put in their take. I believe that it has been, after last night, now 885 days since an NA 1 seed has lost to an EU 1 seed. Thanks to TL finding the 2-1 over K-Corp. So just business as usual last night. Nothing new and exciting. But that was a fun series. And then HLE tournament favorites. I was not up for this, and I actually have not seen that game yet, but they thumped Top Esports from the looks of things. So that's no surprise. HLE should be heavy favorites coming into this.
Yeah, I was watching the first game of that, and then I just fell asleep during it.
Yeah, I passed out. Yeah.
It's rough on the West Coast whenever these games happen in Korea. But yeah, no, it's exciting to see Team Liquid do well. We can talk through the specifics of their win and what their chances are going forward, but that's cool. There's some other smaller topics that have occurred. They debuted a new HUD that last night. I don't know if we're going to, or UI, I guess, for people that are
they updated the UI, but it's a new HUD. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was on the broadcast. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can go look at the VODs of those games to see what that looks like. Do we have a call about that, Cubby? Are you seeing anybody wanting to call in about that
One
yet?
person had it. I'll take it.
Yeah. We should probably talk about it. The people get really angry. I'm like sitting there watching in the YouTube chat, and people are just fucking fuming about the HUD, saying people should get fired for it. And I'm just like, guys, come on. Is this really what we're doing right now? We're calling on people to get fired because you don't like UI elements. But we'll talk about that. Also, there was one other piece of drama that happened in the past week, and why can't I remember it? I had it just a second ago, and then I got distracted by this HUD situation. Oh yeah, there's like some press conference stuff that's happening that people are kind of mad about. And
Do you want to give the rundown of that in case anyone's interested in giving a call? Because again, I am interested in this from your perspective. I
so
truly.
okay, so first off, I should say that I don't like doing remote coverage of events. It feels really bad. I did it during COVID, and I found it to be very depressing because what happens
Yeah.
is instead of being in person, getting a chance to like talk to the person while you're setting up, having this kind of back and forth, for me, I remember remote coverage is like sitting around, you're sitting in like a Zoom room. First off, why it's not a Skype room, I don't know. And you're waiting for the person to show up, and then you just kind of get this portal. They can't always see you, and so
Mhm.
then you just have this kind of weird one-way conversation with the person, and it makes the interview not, in my opinion, it for me, I should say, I struggle to make a good interview out of that. And so I tend to not do remote interviews that much at these events. And so for First Stand, I was like, well, it's 1 week only. I have to travel for this wedding. I'm just gonna like not do this. I know a bunch of the other media are doing it, and a bunch of people are out there, so it just worked out that way. But what they have done in the past is they do one-on-one interviews for people that are off-site, but very limited because it's difficult for them to set up a million cameras and all these things for people to do a ton of remote interviews. And then they do what they called scrum interviews, which are
Yes.
like mini press conferences where, and this is also really good for like up and coming outlets who can't get like the interview with T1 because everybody wants to interview T1 at like a Worlds or whatever. So, but you could maybe get in there, you can maybe ask a couple questions to one of their players. I did not know about this until I saw it kind of break out as a chatter, I think yesterday, where they basically said, hey, instead of doing scrums, we're going to do these press conferences where you submit questions to players or outlets submit questions to players, and then the questions have a chance to get asked, and then the they will air these on broadcast was what they were said, like these press conferences. But from looking at the general chatter amongst the media, it appears as though this has not gone down particularly good. So there's kind of two separate conversations. There's both the execution and the concept. Supposedly the execution of the situation has not been very good, and that people are like, okay, they're not picking many of our questions. I think maybe on the English broadcast last night they only aired like one of the questions, and
Yeah.
then cut it off before like a second question could be asked. The VODs were supposed to be given to the media after the fact so that the media could get access to these things and make content out of them. It seems like it's been somewhat delayed in doing this. Now, admittedly, this is the first night, and they're figuring it all out. But and then I think maybe some of the broadcasts were not properly attributing the questions to the outlet because these all
Yeah,
get
because
translated
that's
into
the new
different things.
aspect too. Like that's how we're interviewing players afterwards. They like you now see the scrum room and hear the answers and like get a piece of that. And it's not like each broadcast gets an interview with the player.
Yeah,
So it's very different from a consumer perspective as well, broadcast side.
yeah, yes. So, uh, it's been difficult to sort of see how that's going, and I wonder how it's going to improve for night 2. But the other side of it is the concept of it, and I, generally speaking, have not been a fan of Riot ever broadcasting press conferences, because at that point in time, I'm sort of like, as a person who is like interviewing the players in the press conference, I would be like, okay, I'm kind of just creating content for Riot to use, and like if this airs on the broadcast or if it goes live, then there's not much functionality for me to do anything with it afterwards. Like, I'm not going to post the press conference to my YouTube channel if everyone can just see it live on the broadcast, in the same way that there's not much value in me like recording a section of the analyst desk conversation after a game and uploading that to my YouTube. And so I have never felt like it made sense for media to participate in something that Riot is releasing themselves on their own channels, because they also have massive channels in comparison to all of us. So it's sort of like you're just doing this. So like, this is not something, if I had been participating in First Stand and I was participating in these, I would be unhappy about it. I will say that they are still doing one-on-one interviews. So this is just kind of like a nice to have, unless you were particularly reliant on the Scrum interviews. And so I sort of, if I was covering First Stand, what I would do is just not participate in the Scrum or press conference stuff and just rely on one-on-one interviews. And then, like, if nobody shows up to these things and like Riot doesn't really get much value out of it, I don't think from knowing the people that are in charge of the comm stuff, I don't think that this was done maliciously. I just don't. I think that there was kind of a thought of, oh, this will be really fun. Like, we're already doing these press conferences. Now they can get onto the main broadcast. That can be, good if somebody asks a good question. So it's just like, they are not particularly incentivized to do this in a, we're going to hide information, or do this as a way of like censoring people or anything. So I don't see anything of that. I just think it's kind of goofy.
Yeah. I don't have as many opinions on it as you do, but it did seem goofy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, so Raz says this question, they're saying this question's from the LTA, not the publication. So Raz, what I had been hearing was that was based on certain broadcasts. What they were saying was that I think, and I don't know because I haven't seen the full VOD yet, my expectation is what is happening is there's an interviewer that is saying, hey, APA, this question is from TGI, what happened in that game? And then APA answers, and then they go on to the next question. They say, this question is from Cubby Esports. What did happen in this game? I think what is probably happening is then that press conference gets given to somebody who works on the broadcast. That person's like, okay, yeah, we can air like a 30-second clip of this. So they just cut off the top, or they cut off the front, they cut off the end, and they tell, whoever's on the desk or whoever's throwing to it to say, hey, this question's from LTA. And like, that's how it goes. That is clearly not a good way to do it. And so I think this is just certain groups are not as educated on best practices for media attribution as others. So yeah, I think it's not a good good way of going about it. But we'll see. I think they'll evolve it, and there's a good chance this just kind of goes away. But I do know what's the best way to talk about this. There has been, from my understanding, conversation about putting the LTA press conferences as part of a broadcast, like the post-game ones that happen after finals and stuff like that. That is something where I would say to, I would just walk away from the event and not do the press conference. But for a while, I've not been a fan of press conferences because I think that they're, I don't know, they're just kind of goofy. A lot of people ask not so great questions. Especially, I don't know, it's the value of them to a media outlet is not great, because what am I supposed to do? Tell my sponsor, like, hey, I can get the same press conference that everybody else can get, and hopefully mine will hit the YouTube algorithm hard. I don't know. I think press conferences are not valuable for modern media methods. So yeah, that's my stance. I don't know if that answers your question, Cubby.
Somewhat, yeah. I don't feel like we have to take on it now if people aren't passionate about it, but I know that this is something you've been obviously doing for a long time and have had educated takes on in the past. So for the broadcast perspective, my concern is like, do they cut out the person that's doing interviews now on broadcasts? Like, is it now a body less, at least broadcast side, because this like replaces that?
Oh yeah, you're talking about like the interviewer on the broadcast.
Yes. Yeah. That's where my head's
because yes, they are, to your point. I think that they have tried to, over time, they have tried to centralize as many things as they can so that, for instance, rather than there being a bunch of different spectators for every different language broadcast, there's one spectator feed.
Yeah.
And now they could do something where it's like, instead of we have to go separate every pro player and every language feed gets a different pro player, it's like, let's just do one interview and every broadcast gets that same interview and stuff. I think
Exactly. Yeah,
that's
and like
yeah.
what Raz said is in the chat, there's no interviewer for the show. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly where my head went. So
I think
anyway.
that's not great.
No, it's not.
And I don't know if maybe they're just doing that for First Stand, because First Stand is supposed to be like
It's a week sprint.
a mini show, but I would be disappointed if you get rid of interviewers, you know.
Same here.
I think interviews do good work.
I'm going to count on Riot to not have that not be the case for MSI and Worlds, but
yeah,
it was a little bit awkward to see for this. So yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway. All right. Should we start bashing on EU?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's time to hop into calls.
Yeah. All right. Guys, you guys know the drill in chat. If not, command Discord in the chat. You can call into the show if you go to discord.gg/Travis. Drop your take at Cubby. I will drag you into the waiting room. And yeah, well, just give your take from there. If it's good, you'll be in the waiting room, and then we'll take your calls and we'll get into it. So we have good coverage so far. Room to take a couple more. So if you have takes, please give them. And besides that, Travis, I'm going to hop in and take the first caller.
Yeah. Off Cubby goes. Raz is saying that it was just a situation where there's a clean video of them not saying the publication's name. Yeah, that's bad. They should not do that. All right. While we have Cubby off grabbing the caller, thank you to let's see where we got. Heart of Kyber, Cheeky Noon, Linus Calling, Sweet Be Good, Magnarius, Jammin TST, Shaunatonin, Raylim, Mad Fishy for the 4 years. Holy moly. PP Doc, let's see, SLC Soy Boy, El Chango for a whole year. Thank you, everybody. That's awesome. We should be getting there. Oh, and over on YouTube, I'd be remiss if I missed we have a $10 super chat from Jeremy. Thank you so much. YouTube, you guys currently have more viewers than Twitch. Maybe you might consider becoming a member of the YouTube channel so you can see exclusive content. We have L Jesus here. L Jesus, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Orlando, Florida.
Orlando, Florida. I'm about to go to Florida, but not Orlando.
I did hear, yeah.
Yes. I'm going to be going to, I guess I shouldn't dox myself because I'm going to like I'm flying to Tampa, but I'm going to like a smaller beach town on the other side.
Well, I actually won't. I do know what city you're probably talking about then, but I probably won't say it then.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, what do you want to talk about on the show?
So I'm actually calling in because I think with the recent showing of TL versus KC, and then the like numerous times we've been shitting on EU internationally for the past like 2.5 years, like whether it's Worlds or like TL versus Fnatic, I think that we've shown time and time again that we are the better region, and that we deserve, since we've actually gotten one of our world slots in a way taken away, since LTA North will have a max of 2 world spots this year. I think we should play EU for their 3rd seed at Worlds.
So bring back what was done for the 4th seed in the past.
Yeah, like I know we lost with Golden Guardians, but like I mean, come on, guys. Our 3rd seed, if our 3rd seed can beat their 3rd seed, we deserve it more. That's all I'm saying.
But if excuse me, if Korea's 3rd seed could be, like you start to run into trouble whenever you're saying like the best team should just be there.
I guess that's fair.
Okay.
I mean, at least for when it comes to Europe, I think it's just our teams have felt like a lot stronger towards the middle of the pack, at least in my opinion. Like EU's always had like G2 and then everyone else sucked. So that's where I also feel like that kind of mentality comes from, where it's like most of our teams are stronger than most of Europe's teams. They just get carried by G2.
Yeah, I'm a little worried that, like, if I was Riot, one of my immediate concerns would be like, okay, but have you seen North American viewership versus European viewership? Which one of these regions would we rather have 3 teams at Worlds than the other?
Yeah.
So that is like the sort of practical, shitty business perspective on it. But let's ignore that for a second and just go into your take. I don't know, Cubby, what do you think? Are we the superior region? Should we get 3 teams?
Performance-wise, yes. I think that it's really tough for fans because I look at EU, and I will also, I mean, this will be a time where I tie in tier 2 as well. Look at the health of not even just LEC, but their secondary leagues in like that region, right? Like LFL is a really healthy league. Prime League is a really healthy league. NLC has been revived thanks to Casual to be a somewhat healthy league. That doesn't really exist here for NACL. We have good players that are now going to EU. Like shout out to Yukino, who just got picked up by KC's secondary team. There is not a better opportunity for Yukino here in North America now that the main teams do not have secondary teams. And I think a big part of the reason as to why NA has been better is that this batch of pros that came up are better than the batch of pros that EU had. I feel like EU had almost an embarrassment of riches, and it feels like LEC has been a big part of like just an open revolving door into the overwhelming amount of rookies that they had, where they gave every rookie not as much time to see if they would be good or not. And because that they had more people to choose from, they just ended up kind of like revolving, like there was a lot of player turnover. I think that here we had some really talented players that have come up in the last 3, 4, 5 years that orgs have really heavily invested in, and those players have paid off. And I found that a fun part of the KC-TL matchup, the fact that both mid and AD roles that historically were looked at as, oh, you have to import because these guys, their hands are not as good as the Korean or Chinese players, were developed in-house by each team and have made to be pretty solid carries. Like Kalist, for me, is one of the most exciting players that has come up in LEC. Vladdy, I think deservedly so, is getting a ton of credit for his play to start off this year and the improvement that we've seen from Vladdy since he's hit LEC. And APA and Yon, I mean, Yon was the player of the series. Like, Yon has been freaking in this past split. And now going on to year 3, Yon feels like an elite player in the LTA North. So, like, I look at the ecosystem and I 100% see, okay, EU gets an extra seed. I get that. I don't disagree with that at all. When I look at the success of their alternative leagues and the viewership. But then when you look at performance as a fan, it makes 0 sense because NA has been much stronger than EU. And it feels like we lost a slot just because, like, combining, right? Like we combined for what we're going to try and have be the Americas. I'm okay with that, right? But losing a world slot sucks. Like nothing in our performance actually deserves to lose a slot, right? Yeah. And so like it really blows that it feels like that's just a consequence for the new formula. And when I look at the numbers and the ecosystems, does it make sense? Yes. But also you look at the performance that the teams are putting up. I think the fans have every right to be salty off that. Like if you are a fan of the region, because you look at the performance and it makes 0 sense. Like this, we're being rewarded, we're being punished for being better. And that sucks. So I get the dissonance here from a fan perspective.
Well, and one of the things, so I know at the beginning I gave this a sort of, here's what the number crunching argument would be, which is like, oh, we don't have as many viewers as EU, so having less teams is like a thing. And I see people in the chat saying, hey, we lost a spot because our league was dying, or we lost a spot because the viewers suck. The only thing is like historically, that has not felt as though that is the reason why Riot awards spots at Worlds. It has felt as though, and it has somewhat corresponded, right? It has somewhat corresponded that if you are a league that is doing better, you are going to get more viewers and all that stuff. But generally speaking, it has always felt as though the main reason teams got more entries into international events is because they do better. And so I think, look, we've definitely had a bit of a superior run than EU in recent years at international events. I think sometimes, look, I am Mr. NA fanboy. I do actually think we're the stronger region right now. I do think at times there were format reasons that sort of favored us a little bit in some of these runs. And it unfortunately, prevented the amount of NA versus EU. I love for these formats to allow more data to prove that we're the superior region.
But technically, this would give us more EU versus NA matchups, anyways.
Yes. No. I'm not saying that the idea of it is bad, but I'm just saying that I think, look, historically, it seems as though Riot has wanted to say, hey, if you are better at Worlds and we think you've got enough teams that can go compete, like, we're going to help you get more spots at Worlds and MSI, by the way. Like, you're focusing on Worlds, but we also lost an MSI slot. So
I didn't even know that. Wait, do we? So if we get like
LTA
if we
sends
clean
two
sweep
teams.
LTA South like we did this year,
LTA
Well,
sends two teams.
we don't play in split 2.
LTA.
we don't.
No.
LTA friends. LTA sends 2 teams to MSI. One of them is from the north and one of them is from the south.
What happened?
So yes, we don't play in split 2. We only play at the beginning or the end of split 1 and the end of split 3.
That's a little unlucky, I won't lie.
By the way, for anyone in chat being like, oh, they don't deserve a spot, they deserve a spot at each tournament. The issue is the LTA North losing a slot. So
Yeah.
I will push back.
I'm all
against
for
that.
Brazil getting to go. I just
They should go, but because the tournaments got narrowed up, like Worlds is gonna be less teams this year. We lost a slot. That sucks. By the way, for everyone being like, what? They do deserve a slot? Back when Riot had 16, 17 official regions, everyone got a slot at Worlds. That precedent needs to exist for these leagues to be successful.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that, because I think if you just started cutting out every minor region, then what's even the point of them having their own league?
Yeah, if you're not giving South spots, then you should probably just not have South exist.
Exactly, yeah.
So
yeah,
I am pretty disappointed because it does suck that at a time in which we are. I like what you said, Cubby, because I think a lot of people might be like, "Oh, he's just talking about tier 2 again," but
there's a lot of that in chat right now.
Listen, we are. There are 2 things that are happening simultaneously here. We are competing better internationally than Europe. And the reason why we're doing it is somewhat off the back of NA talent. NA rookie talent, which we've been talking about for a while, that came from a secondary system that the team owner said and claimed did not produce good talent. And now they're using it to best international teams. And it's disappointing because you know what the biggest fucking argument against us getting an extra spot at Worlds is? The fact that it's very unclear if we will continue to be better internationally because we've gutted the system that let us get to this point.
That was my whole point as well about bringing up tier 2. Again, players like Yukino, for background, Yukino, he just signed with K Corp's secondary team as a jungler. Yukino boot camped in EU, hit number 1 of the server. He has consistently been top 10 of the server here. He played with Sniper on 100 Thieves Academy. And there is no better spot for Yukino to go than K Corp Blue. And again, we'll talk about NACL OQs in a bit. The fact that they opened everything up, there is a rule that with a promotion relegation slot, if a team like FlyQuest ran a secondary team and promoted, they wouldn't be able to keep it, and it would be null. They nerfed the value of what it means to have a secondary team. So the only way that they can actually work with teams in the system now is by partnering. And I'm telling you, the partnership, there's no money being exchanged when it comes to there's no money. Pretty much it's just that that staff gets exposure to what you're doing as a team, and that's it. I'll give credit to C9. I know that Porty and the socials team helped out with Blue Water last year, and it was more than just coaches coming in. And Viger V2 did a session with their mid laner Samakin. So it's not like there's nothing going on, but it is not the fucking same as having 5 players in a house doing the same exact thing that the pros are doing with the same exact people. And the fact that they argue to get rid of that as a cost-saving measure, the next batch of players, the APAs of the world, the Yawns of the world, the Masus, the Busios, they are not going to fucking exist. They're going to go elsewhere. And that is brutal. And again, when you look at the region, we get Saint and Loki coming in as imports. These guys are good players. But we're not getting Zinni. We got Thanatos because DK wanted Siwu. You're not getting the cream of the crop. They stay in the region, with those teams in LEC, LPL, and LCK. So really, like, I feel like they've really handicapped themselves moving forward in terms of like how they're competing. They're benefiting off of the talent that they had in the last like crop, the last batch of players, and it is so much harder for the next batch of players to do what this batch has done. So I feel like that's a big part of the reason ecosystem wise it makes sense that EU gets 3 spots. Performance wise, it does not make sense that LTA North has less spots. You know?
Yeah, I know that we're going off topic and we're getting kind of salty, so I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But
it's not salty. It's just a fact. Like,
I mean, I'm salty.
Yeah.
I don't want us to. It sucks that okay. Is this very? You and I are falling into the NA mentality. I think of like we just watched Europe or North America Best Europe last night, and what we're talking about is like the doom of North America as the tier 2 system dies. And obviously, I was partially the person that brought it up.
Yeah.
So let's just take a moment and celebrate that this happened. We did beat EU, K Corp fans
NA number one
in shambles, and yeah, things are bummer town for Europe, but great for us. And I do, you know what? I'm down, caller. I'm down for the take that we should have to that we fight for the 3rd seed with them. I guess technically, this is the problem. It gets awkward because from a branding and marketing perspective, we are sending 3 teams to Worlds. We're sending 3 LTA teams to Worlds. So it becomes really difficult because you have to figure out like who would be the even 4th team to go. And now you have to have the 4th team battle Europe.
Well, also,
if we're better.
Well, this is also somewhat going on too. I believe the top 2 regions of MSI, their 4th seeds compete for the last slot in Worlds.
Okay, but
so
I
like,
mean, I don't think that's gonna be
well. I mean, potentially, we've upsets have happened.
Hey, maybe. Hey, if that happens, bro, but I'm here for it.
I mean, if that does like in the system that you are proposing, if LTA beats LEC, then LEC sends 2 teams. LTA is technically sending 4 teams, and only, let's say, like LCK or LPL, only one of those regions would have 4, and then you'd have a lot of folks be like, oh, well, why does LTA have 4 teams when like LCK or LPL only sent 3? And I feel like that's a very valid argument too. So it just sucks that it feels like, because again, the Riot, what they did this year was they condensed globally everything going on, and they tried to they changed up the formats. They did 3 splits. I'm still in on a lot of the stuff that's going on. I think it's good, but it does suck that one of the consequences of this is that we lost a slot, whereas EU did not, and we have outperformed EU for 885 days. So that blows.
By one metric.
Yes, but also look at placements in Worlds. Azale, ran the graphic. Have you made quarters in Worlds in the last 3 years?
Yeah. Okay. Here's the problem. How did our 3rd seed do at Worlds last year?
What do you mean? They didn't make Worlds, Travis. They lost in plans.
Exactly. Everyone knows play-in doesn't count.
All right. Anyway, Al Jesus, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout
out? Yeah, shout out to Tempest Gaming. I know they are not eliminated yet. They're playing through. A lot of the guys are pretty cool. I play on their academy team, so rooting for them. And then also shout out to UF Esports for University of Florida. They're also playing and trying to make nationals right now. They're in Southern Conference playoffs. So shout out to them. Got a lot of friends on that team. And then shout out to you guys for making a really fun show and pulling. This is actually my first time calling in, so I'm glad I actually got to get pulled.
Yeah, it was very fun. Thanks for calling in.
All right. Have a good night.
Okay. We are now going to take a quick break. And I'm going to air a video that I made, because I think it's a little easier for me to do a video about this than for the sponsorship, than for me to try to sort of convey it all in the moment, because I can get some visuals going. So we will be right back after this video plays. This video is brought to you by PrizePicks, the best place to win cash while watching your favorite esports or sports. So I'm going to show you right now how this works on the app. It's super easy to use. So maybe I like Jojo Pyun at more than 9.5 deaths over the first 3 games of his series. And maybe I believe Mickey X is going to get less than 31 assists. I'll go ahead and hit finalize lineup, where it'll show me that if both these things end up coming true, and I play an entry fee of, let's say, $20, I'm going to end up winning $60. PrizePicks is available in over 40 states, including California and Texas. And if you sign up, use that link below. It's a big thing that you can do to help me. You can use code Travis whenever you make your first lineup of $5 or more. Win or lose, they're going to give you $50. Now, please only choose to play PrizePicks if you can do so responsibly, but doing so and signing up does help my channel very much. And you can actually join the discussion with other TGI viewers in my Discord. We have a PrizePicks channel. If you're trying to get into it, that's a great place to start. So thanks so much to PrizePicks for sponsoring this piece of content. Okay, hello, we are back. Thank you so much to Travis for doing that wonderful ad read for PrizePicks. But big shout out to PrizePicks. If you haven't seen it yet, well, it's a little outdated now, but Cubby and I did a video with some friends talking about some predictions and lineups that they were making for the matches last night. And how did it go, Cubby?
Well, it's funny because while you ran that ad, I actually just sent the screenshot in the chat. I believe that my square or the pick that I had that I felt the most confident in did not hit for the show, so I'm going to be 0-1.
did not hit 19 assists,
yes,
unfortunately.
But a lot of the other squares that I did feel good about actually did. So like I had APA over 5.5 deaths in the first 2 maps. I felt good about that one, and it ended up, that one did hit. So yeah, we're doing a fun show that we'll throughout first stand, and maybe past that we'll have a few episodes where we make some picks off PrizePicks. But yeah, night 1 was overall positive for me. I had fun playing, and I did more winning than losing, so that was a good time.
Yeah, and one thing that we'll talk about in the next episode of our PrizePicks prediction show that I did not think about, but somebody pointed out to me, Cubby, was when a series goes beyond the first 2 games,
they spawn map 3. Yep.
What's that?
They like spawn map 3 and predictions for that.
Yeah, so
like
they add squares for the third match or the third game. But what's really interesting is how much why my brain is crashing out right now.
How much the first 2 games impacts game 3?
Yeah, well, you know which champions are not going to be available. So you can say, oh, this person's not going to be playing maybe Sejuani. And so the fact that they could end up dying or getting more kills or something like that.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting dynamic with the current format. So I'm excited about all that stuff. So either way, thank you so much to PrizePicks for sponsoring the show. And we will continue to talk about them as we do our show. Stay tuned for that. We're going to try to do something on Wednesday. All right, let's get into the next call. We've got some more subs from folks. We've got Twitching Mars, thank you. Brule or Brewery, and Cruellis. Man, Cruellis for 54 months. And then over on YouTube. All right, listen, YouTube folks. You guys got more viewers right now, but Twitch is crushing you on this front. Jeremy's holding it down with a $10 super chat. But you can subscribe or become a member for way cheaper than over on Twitch, because you can just do it for $2.99. And when you do, you get access to early content. You get to vote in polls on exclusive videos that I make and all that stuff. So, I'm just trying to let you guys know that you got it made. Spaced Out 24 is here. Spaced Out 24, where are you calling from?
I am also coming from Orlando, Florida.
From Orlando, Florida? Wow. Like, I'm going to Florida, and all the Floridians are all calling. What's up?
Nothing much. Your guys?
Not much. We're waiting to hear your take.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So my take is, TL success actually over the last year and a half. I mean, if we look at last year's international games, especially against T1 specifically, they showed that they can. They're willing to go, pound for pound against, the top major regions. My thing is that in order for them to keep that success, what spawns, the spawning coaching staff's, ability to impose that level of discipline, because one thing that screwed them over against the LCK and LPL teams in those international competitions was, I don't want to single them out because they're bad players, but APA and these unfortunate face checkings or unnecessary shot callings, which kind of screwed them over in some of their matches, because if during their MSI run, they were in the first 2 matches, they lost to T1, and I believe it was their best of 5 going into the playoffs for the MSI. TL was giving them a run for their money. Like, they were leading in all stats and categories in that game until the unnecessary shot callings.
So pretty much like you're a fan of how TL plays. You see a lack of discipline, and you're wondering like how they can work on that throughout the short span of the tournament because you feel like that's what's missing for them to maybe like make a run again.
Yeah, because I mean, if you
Okay.
look at APA and Umpty's games, like if there's ever a situation where they feel like the team's falling behind, they'll both make unnecessary callouts or just run into a situation where they shouldn't have been there to begin with, which evidently leads to the team's downfall within that match.
Okay.
It's a pretty consistent team when it comes to international play, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the challenges of this tournament. It is such a sprint, and you have a lot of games in a short amount of time. Like, it's going to be really hard to pivot in terms of what you think's good or bad in strats. I will say, like, at least for your topic, I think that like one thing that I appreciate about, and I'll speak on this like with Spawn, but I know that this is going to be the case with the whole TL staff. I feel like a lot of people talk about TL staff and Spawn because a lot of what you're talking about, it's been lacking this year, but that has been what the team has done best in the past. Being disciplined, especially with how they play the map. In terms of how you work on that throughout a week, obviously it's been an issue for the whole split, especially with Umti. But Umti, I mean, he crushed Yike Yike did not have a good showing last night.
Oh yeah, no, it was a slaughter.
Yeah, and like that's not a great sign for K Corp throughout. But I like the one thing I can say is Spawn talks a lot about accountability, and I know that he lets that team get away with a lot less bullshit than what other pro players get away with in other teams. And I think that again, when you come to a tournament that is this fast and this furious, you kind of have to rely on the work that you've done leading up to this because it's really hard to make changes during. So, I mean, look, like when you spawn into the game as a coach, like you're hopeless. It really is like whatever you put in beforehand, you just hope that that comes through when those 5 players are on their own on stage. And so I think it like for TL, there's going to be no magic solution to this. They just have to trust the process, and hopefully we can get less games where we have APA giving up a death with no man on ASOL trying to get a wave in, or we can have Umti getting caught. I still think that those guys overall had a pretty decent series. I felt like Vladdy was a real standout, but I don't think APA was like bad by any means. Like outside of game 2, right? That was a roughie, but happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just kind of have to trust the sauce you have going into there and hope it shines through. It's like, again, it's really tough to make changes within 6 days. If you're playing that many games at that high level of competition, if you don't trust what you are bringing in, then you're probably handicapping yourself in there. So yeah.
All right. Yeah, I do want to just clarify when you said you think they're going to be the first team to beat T1. Do you mean Korea, like Hanwha?
Possibly, because I mean, in my personal opinion, I honestly felt like when I was watching them at the MSI last year, I honestly felt like, wow, this might be the first NA team to actually top a LCK Giant. Because if you look at the first 2 games, even though they like I said, unnecessary APA and Umpty, getting caught out, TL was winning those matches. And then obviously, game 3 they defeated T1 and then unfortunately lost out in game 4, finishing that series 3-1. So I felt like this was TL's NA's first chance to actually top a LCK Giant as opposed to just any other run of the mill LCK team.
Yeah, I am very curious what our new co-host for the episode thinks of this. Chronicler, what do you think are the chances of TL taking down an LCK team?
You just immediately want me to be mean. What's happening here? This is not cool. Let me set up my webcam.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I've fixed your audio too, so you're not echoing. Okay. So while you're working on your webcam, why don't you?
Yeah. So realistically, the way I look at it, okay, I think you got visual on me now.
I do, and it switched. Your microphone switched over to not the one that's in front of you. I don't know if you can change that in Skype
There
or
we
in
go.
Discord.
So now we're good, right?
Yes, I think so, but I don't think it's using the microphone in front of you on Discord.
On Discord?
What okay, here? Why don't you, Cubby, go ahead and while he's working on that, why don't you sort of reassert the argument here?
All right, there we go.
So if T1 can fix, or if TL can fix some of their discipline issues, they might have a chance to like be the first team to take down an LCK team. So in this case, Hanwha.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, historically, there's no reason to think that it couldn't happen. But I do think it would require a historical level of underperformance. I think, especially having cast both series yesterday, I'm a big TL fan, always have been. I'm really happy they won. I think that they definitely earned their win, and they were clearly the better team on the day. I'm always happy to see my boy Umti do well, you know, because he's kind of always been the way that he is now. I think this is just who he is. But I love to see that kid succeed. I think Jan is one of the coolest stories that we've had. But realistically, unless Hanwha massively underperform, I think every single individual player on that team, if they play to their own level, even if a single one of them is on, I think that's enough to just kind of run over. I think, especially having gone from the KC to TL series straight into Hanwha Live TES yesterday, the difference in how particularly the team fights play out and how meticulous the play is, and I don't even think TES were playing up to their standard level, right? I think is going to be really hard to get through, like close that gap, particularly in a very small amount of time. Because the way Hanwha sets up team fights, I think it's going to be really hard to match. And I think a lot of the mistakes that we saw TL kind of rely on that KC made in terms of, particularly in the final game, like that is 4-0 they got. You're not getting that, right? Like if you give a Zeri a kill against Hanwha Life, you just lose the game. It's that straightforward.
I mean, I'll be honest, like going into this, and this will be fun to say because when we record Hotline League next week, the tournament's over. I don't think Hanwha drops more than 3 games throughout the entire tournament. For me, that's how heavy a favorite Hanwha is for this event, and how strong they came in and like are playing. I'd be really surprised if they lost more than 3 games. Straight up, I think that they've been really, really strong.
I mean, Chronicler, are you concerned at all for Hanwha when TL and Hanwha are playing Game 5 and Fearless is fully active? You know, I think it's going to create a lot of chaos.
Okay, Travis, you know, right? There's no you gotta know what you're asking here.
You gotta live in the world as a hypothetical, man.
What? I'm just saying, like, I think it, like, clearly Fearless is going to make things even crazier, and I worry about, you know, the fact that as we get to Game 4 and Game 5 in a series between these two teams, that Fearless could end up becoming a huge issue for Hanwha.
Okay, no, say we're in a hypothetical. They're not beating Hanwha Game 5. There's no world. There is no universe. There's absolutely... If they beat them 3-0. You know, everyone in Hanwha is having a horrible day. They lose 2 games. They get mentally... They are not winning Game 5 against... There's I'm not one to often make blanket statements like it's 0 shot. This team has won... What?
Hanwha is playing out of their mind this split, man. It's been crazy.
They have won, 4 fifth games against, and I want to again, T1, Gen.G, DK, and then Gen.G again. I don't know.
They can't lose Game 1. They can't lose Game 5. How can you beat them?
This is so disappointing because I know NA fans are so frustrated that we haven't seen a full best of 5 Fearless with our team. And now apparently we're going to continue to not see a full best of 5 series whenever.
No, I mean, we might. You got semis. Like realistically, they should make semis, right? Oh, you mean like actually getting to Game 5?
Yeah, exactly. Because it only went to 3 games in.
Well, all you need to do is beat TES, and then you're in a great spot.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well then easy
Do
for
you
us. Thank you.
do you believe TL has a realistic chance of beating TES? Because I mean,
Yeah.
last year they didn't do that. They didn't do half bad
It,
against in Worlds against the LPL teams.
it's more realistic than Hanwha, I'm telling you that.
Yeah, I mean, I think TS should win. Like, I'm not gonna overreact, but TS is both a team that has historically had really big issues at internationals, and I think they looked a lot more fallible in particularly their current read on the meta, as well as their solo lane performance. I think was a bit rough. So I could see that, especially in the best of 3.
This is why Chronicler loves coming on Hotline League, because he gets to have conversations he would never get to have on
That's
broadcast
fun.
or elsewhere.
That's great.
All right. Well, either way, thank you so much, Spaced Out, for the call. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
No, just shout out to you guys. No, keep up the great work.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
See ya. All right. We're going to go into our next call, but while Cubby's grabbing the next caller, Chronicler, welcome to the show. I know we just kind of threw you in mid-call, but how you doing? How's first stand? How's life?
I'm good. Yeah, first stand's been really fun. It's really nice having everyone over again in Korea. It's always a good time. And I love Fearless. I'm a big fan. So I'm happy to see that actually be a thing. I mean, I think at tournaments is not quite as much of a necessity as it is for regular season, but it's still good to have.
Yeah.
And
what has been
international tournaments are always fun.
What has been the LCK fan reception of Fearless? Because it does feel like it's just sort of been universally beloved in the West, and so I'm wondering what it's like in Korea.
As far as I can tell, it's kind of the same. Otherwise, I'm sure you guys have also seen the rumors. I don't know to what extent those are substantive rumors. Like, I'm not being coy. I actually don't know. But my take from the beginning was always that viewers are gonna fucking love Fearless because it's just more entertaining to watch because you get more different matchups, right? And then Lanes obviously obfuscated that a little bit, but just having different champions makes viewers happy. If it makes viewers happy, it's what the esport needs.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of what I'm sure will happen down the line, which is where people are going to start gaming the Fearless system, right? Because there are definitely ways that you can do that. But then fixes will have to come as we go.
Yeah.
Cubby, do we have a Fearless call?
This one isn't Fearless, but it's kind of close.
All right. Well, maybe we'll kind of continue the discussion through this.
Yeah,
Khan
if
is
we
here.
want to take a Fearless call, it could be interesting.
Khan, where are you calling from?
I am calling from Boise, Idaho.
Boise, Idaho. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I'm calling in with the take that after even this first day, I think this lane swap or anti-lane swap change is definitely going to make games less exciting moving forward. I'm somebody who thinks that the very modern lane swap meta has actually given us more exciting and more action-packed, or at least parts of games this last year since it's kind of become, in place. And that the forced standard practice just leads to a lot of teams picking, matchups that will be beneficial or matchups that will just allow them to push waves back and forth, and you just get a lot of farming until later into the game, which I find less exciting than actually having interesting lane swap map movements and playing off objectives and stuff.
People, this is the spiciest take we've had on episodes of Hotline League for a while.
Chat. Chat
feels
very
floating in a way that I
this.
haven't seen in quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate at all on why you feel it's not exciting, or why you are not a fan of it?
So I think when you force, without lane swaps, when you force things into this, you're having to play lanes. Fearless can help out with this, but you're forcing teams to be playing matchups that are likely going to be safer in lanes, or you're going to be picking them that are just kind of lane bullies. And you end up with, just having, I feel, less tempo decisions at the beginning, being able to strategically make the game. I think you've really neutered the support's ability to have an impact in the early game, roaming around, making more actionable plays, even before first objectives like dragons and grubs come around. I think that you end up just getting very safe waves pushing back and forth. Some trading happens here and then, but you're kind of just waiting for your jungler to gank, blow a flash, and maybe gank again later on. You're getting, I think, a lot less actiony games. And I remember even back before lane swaps became meta again, there were so many times watching Pro League where it was just teams just basically bouncing waves back and forth for like 20 minutes, and it was, I found it more boring than what the modern lane swap game was like.
Cubby, why don't you lead our charge on this?
I agree with the caller.
Oh,
Yeah. I've been a long time swap enjoyer. And I know that this isn't the popular take. And I also understand that this comes from, I mean, I watch a lot of games, right? So I am not your average viewer. And I can understand average viewers wanting no swaps because it's closer to the game that they know at home. But swaps are very, very, very healthy for the game. I think that, again, like people view this as cheese or like, it's not viable. Guys, everything is viable in the game if you can make it work. That is part of the fun of the game. Like we saw Shaco Jungle get played by River, and it worked. I think that's part of why we like Fearless, but also swaps open up the book on this. And I really agree. There was like Dom is anti-swap, or sorry, for swaps, anti getting rid of it. He posted an image of what the support meta looked like when swaps were not a thing. It was pretty much all marksman. And a lot of the meta in League, I can name multiple tournaments where a support counter completely changed how the tournament played because swaps were not involved in those tournaments. One would be Afromu playing ranged supports at MSI, changed the entire meta. T1 changed the entire meta, swapping back to like what they played just for this their Weibo run when they won last year. Yeah, in 23. MF Rocks Tigers, best of 5 of all time. MF countering Zyra completely changed like what that series looked like, right? I think that iteration in draft, when you have swaps, it actually opens that up for many, many, many more roles because of what you can find to not just work in the lane, but work for the game itself. I think a great example would be that Game 5 Olaf that HLE played versus T1. That Olaf was a Thanos pick. The only way to actually have beaten that Olaf would have been to swap on it and shut it down.
No, wouldn't you say that that's because of Fearless, not because of lane swaps?
Yes,
Olaf?
it is. But also, like, if with the swaps not being a thing, for me, you actually remove the way that you have to beat that comp. Like, in order to beat that, you have to swap into it, to play it out, which, that is an actual option for that game, for the opposing team. If you have to play that game out standard, I think T1 they probably get destroyed in that one. I think that, again, what people are enjoying with Fearless, I think a lot of fans attribute the diversity to Fearless. I will also attribute the diversity to the fact that swaps existed in Fearless. And I think that the health of the game, it was really important to have both in this split. And it made, for me, this split one of the most fun splits of League that I followed in a long time.
Chronicler, you seem to disagree.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I do love my randoms. Any fan of lane swaps is also a fan of Emily Rand. I'm down with that. I actually think the arguments of the caller were also very well structured. I really appreciate that. And obviously Cubby as well, but he's not going to get praise for it because he's kind of supposed to, and I know that he does that. For me, lane swaps are one of those things where I think theoretically, and when you are a really big fan of high-level strategy in the game, it's great. When you watch League of Legends for 8 hours a day, and I assume most lane swap people would agree with me on this, lane swap should be a strategy, not a necessary thing that you do every single game. But I think in practice, when lane swaps are good, they happen every single game, which is why they fucking suck, right? Like, because every single time, there are very few reasons why you wouldn't lane swap if they're good. And I think that if Riot can find a middle ground where you lane swap like 1 out of 4 times, like they go double Halo Blade spot lane, then I think, you go so all in. If they then find a great late swap angle, that's great. However, my Game 5 finals in the LCK finals, or in the LCK Cup finals, Keen made one mistake, and he didn't play well that. He made one mistake on Ornn, didn't get to play for the rest of the game. And in lane swaps, that is so much more prevalent and so much worse. And I think there are so many more games where a team makes one or two rotational mistakes, a top laner just ill-advised by his starvation for XP. He's like, I can get to that turret, and then he dies twice, and then the game is just done, right? Like, there are just a lot of matchups where that just means that, particularly when you're playing at the highest level, when you're playing against LCK teams that are then not going to give you an opening, you just have to sit there for 40 minutes as the top laner just doesn't get to play the game, because if he ever walks up, just gets chunked. So for me, the problem with lane swaps is I think theoretically they're great. I think they are a really cool tool for teams to find creative alternative strategies. But I also think that if they're taken away, teams will find other ways to do so. I don't think lane swaps are the only one. We'll see if lane swaps are actually gone. Like, we kind of celebrated yesterday, but we'll have to see whether it's actually going to remain the... I've seen some of the degeneracy, yes.
Okay, because I sent one to the team. I'm not sure if the person I sent it to spread it around. There are a few things that I will refrain from speaking on that are still options. I will also add, I 100% agree with you with swaps being in 100% of games is bad. I think for me, it should be 15 to 20%. I want it to be an option. And I think that with the changes they have, and I know it's temporary, but it just completely annihilated them. And I don't think that's the right answer. I think it's very fair to say that swaps are too good. But I still think like there are different iterations of swaps that we're seeing. There are a lot of fun ways to min-max that I appreciate the same way I appreciate min-maxing lane. And again, I realize I'm not the average viewer in this, and Chronicler isn't either, but I think it's good for the health of the game if swaps are an option. And I am very out on having it be zero swaps. I think that the game gets way more boring when there's zero swaps.
Khan, what do you think of this take that... okay, maybe it should only be 15 to 20% of the game, or a quarter of the games, or something along those lines?
Chronicler brought up a lot of great points. I do agree with the idea. I think in general with pro play, I think anything that is set standard 100% of the time will end up becoming boring and stale over time, whether that's standard lanes, whether that's lane swaps. I think if you go into a game and teams are able to prep out knowing it's 100% going to play out that way, you're going to eventually get broken down to a way where it's just going to be boring and waiting to get, later into the game different ways. I think the 10 to 20% is fine. I think I'd go a little higher. Maybe I'm a little bit more high. I think lane swaps just are stuck in this bad stigma of like the original lane swap days, like back when Dyrus is crying because his top lane Lulu pick didn't get like level 3 until 20 minutes in or something, saying he just wants to play League of Legends. I feel like this last season, watching multiple regions and stuff, even with Fearless, I felt top lane especially was a way for lane swaps to really give, I think, top laners more skill expression. I think the top laners that succeeded in this Fearless system and this Fearless lane swap meta were the ones that are able to play them well and get the most XP out of it. And we're able to play like impactful picks, whether it be like Rumble, whether it be in Bessa. It wasn't just the people who were sitting back playing like kind of like the safe bruiser tanks all the time. So I always kind of, fall back on people who will say like, hey, with lane swaps means top laners can't play impactful people. Because I think in some ways when you have standard meta, top laners lose the chance to play some of those picks because they can't lane as well against some of their counter matchups. That's just some thoughts I had back. So that's always my biggest thing I hear from people is people saying that like top lane just sucks for lane swaps. But I think that at least with this first play, I felt like in almost every region, top laners that were like playing on their best level, like were able to shine more in this lane swap era.
Yeah, I am very interested to see how this evolves, because it does feel... I agree with your point that there just seems to be an immediate stigma against the idea of lane swaps. And I do think a lot of that does come from before, whenever these things were initially prevalent. And it's funny that they somewhat made a return because it feels like like lane swaps are something that you send the sport into remission on, and then they could like flare back up based off of different balance decisions. And it's like, oh no,
just
we got
comes
lane
back.
swaps back. We gotta bring the patient back in and get rid of these things. You're exhibiting acute lane swap signs. So it is kind of interesting to see how it works. I do want to just throw it back to Cubby and Chronicler. One last thing on this is like, what do you think that it would take for these things to become something that are an occasional option, maybe once in a best of 5, or once every now and then, once a day in a 5-game day?
There was a really good video done by Kelsey Moser around like last year that went through all the balance changes as to like why we got swaps back. A big part of it was nerfing plate gold and making it less like evening out, taking top tower versus bot tower. Meaning the top and mid, they get more resistances for early parts of the game if you have more people in the lane. That was like the old defense for swaps. Over time, they kind of nerfed it, and then swaps got too popular. I think that like those were a couple of the big changes that led to swaps being back. So I think if they buffed plate gold, and like again, if they just reverted those changes, then I think that you would get to a spot where, like right now in swaps, if you opt into the swap and you send your bot lane top to start and it's not matched, you're probably losing out on 240 gold split between like 2 members, so 2 plates. And that's not that big of a deal. Like that's well worth dodging out the first 3 or 4 waves against a bot lane that's going to slam you. So I think that's one aspect, like just kind of changing up that to make it like if you're all of a sudden down 3 or 4 plates or a turret, then swapping becomes a much more difficult decision to make.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Con, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
I'll shout out my own movie review channel, just my name, Josh Kahn. But I also want to shout out Travis, because he had a really good video this weekend about the Riot Games stuff that I feel very similarly on. And I think he did a really good job breaking down a lot of the last 5 to 7 years of Riot and why things may not feel the same and stuff. So if you haven't checked that out yet, you guys should. I think Travis does a really good job breaking down like why things might not feel the same way.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm always concerned whenever you and I agree on something. That's usually a concerning note. But I appreciate you saying that because I do feel like that vid worked out pretty well. But I think because of just the topic, or maybe because it's now Hextech chess stuff got solved, so people don't care as much about it. It didn't perform as well. But I appreciate you giving a shout out. So thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep.
All right. I think we can do one more call, and then we'll take a break. And then we've got a couple more callers, and then that'll be the show.
Got it.
Thank you to Shauna Tonin. Oh, I see. He's making a joke about me agreeing with Con. Thank you to Cytone SC and Golden KS. Thank you all for the subs. Really appreciate it. Over on Twitch. Over on YouTube, do we have any members coming through? Let's check. No members. Actually, I do think somebody had tried to like re-up their membership, but then YouTube gave a glitch on it. So maybe there's something interesting going on there. Either way, if somebody's remembered, thank you for remembering. Chronicler, are you taking care of Kobe while he's over there?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
thank
I
you.
think
I worry about him
actually,
whenever he's away.
No,
you know?
I've gone climbing with him. I've taken him out to a bunch of places. There's a fake Chipotle in Korea that's great. He's been eating burritos, although I didn't think he really liked them, which makes sense because it's Korean burritos.
Yeah.
I think he's doing well. We had fun yesterday. It was fun casting with him.
I saw he posted his Instagram story of his hands being super beat up from the climbing. He said, "I think."
Oh yeah, mine are still cooked as well.
Yeah.
Both of us don't have any calluses, so I think
I worry about him whenever he's away from the apartment for too long. You know, but I'm glad you're taking him out of the apartment or the hotel, because sometimes he can just hole up in there. You know, so
no, he's out and about. He's doing well.
Good. All right. Kazanan is here. Kazanan, is that how you say your name?
It's Kazanan.
Kazanan. Kazanan, where are you
Yes.
calling from?
Vancouver.
Vancouver. Are you excited for MSI?
I am very excited.
So am I, honestly. I love Vancouver. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. I'm so excited to be there
Gorgeous city.
for 2 weeks. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about how it is not such a crazy thing that TL can make it to first stand finals.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not
So
such a
this is
crazy
more
thing.
TL Hopium after our first call. Or second
Yes,
call? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
so basically what we need to do is we just need to get third and we need to avoid HLE because right now TES look beatable if TL play well.
All right. Well, and why do you think they look beatable? Because I do worry that what we saw was them playing probably the winners of the tournament last night, and so perhaps they are going to look more beatable than under normal circumstances.
Honestly, I think the spawn buff, first of all, is a very real thing. Secondly, I think everybody is firing on all cylinders. He's honestly won me over. I just think, like, I don't know, it's a feeling, you know? Can't shake it. I think we're gonna make
Vibes.
it.
Okay. So your
It's
reasoning
vibes.
is vibes.
Exactly.
Okay. We've had, honestly, these are some classic Hotline League calls tonight. Somebody calls in, gets booed by the chat. Somebody calls in, believes in North America because of the vibes. Okay. So, besides vibes, is there anything else you can lock in on? You said Spawn, and
I also
yeah.
secret picks. Nocturne was one of those secret picks I did not expect, and performed real well. And TL have a bunch more of those that they've been hiding, and
Okay.
I know they do.
Okay.
Okay. Speaking of picks, I really hated how Top Esports drafted yesterday, and that could be good for TL. That's about all I got. I still
I
think
was really hoping you would come in with some more support for the caller. Anything else you
Also,
can think of?
momentum.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We love a momentum Hotline League call. Okay, Chronicler. I know we kind of touched on this earlier when you said like it could maybe happen, but do you have hope for Team Liquid making it to the finals?
Well, I still don't think it's likely, but it's definitely doable, right? I think that generally very early on in a tournament, you will have a team, like in this case, it's Hanwha Life. For example, 2023 MSI with JDG, right? Like coming into the tournament, everyone's like, JDG's going to win. And then JDG just kind of dunked on everyone throughout the whole tournament. Like there were a couple of series, they were a little close, but they were very clearly looking like the best. And I feel like Hanwha Life have that position in this game. I don't think TES are at that level. Now, I do think that I've seen the LPL kind of look bad in a first game into then start smashing everyone once they make some small adjustments like a million times. So I don't want to be premature in writing off TES. The biggest difference maker for me, honestly, is the fact that it is a team that has a lot of players on it that I think historically have struggled in high pressure situations at internationals over the last couple of years, which is crazy, right? Yep. Because the team has changed a good amount. Because Tian's gone, but Kanavi still is now there, and as we saw yesterday, unfortunately, does not seem to be in the best of forms. And I think even 369, interestingly enough, because I was 2023 MSI kind of made me a really big 369 fan, but I feel like in recent times, in international specifically, he really hasn't matched up. And 369, I don't think in his current form of what I've seen thus far, is going to be the type of player that, like, he might out-tank Impact, but if Impact gets to play a tank, then I think TL's still pretty happy.
Yeah.
The only real issue I have is the bot lane. As good as Yon is, I think that Jackie Love and Crisp are absolutely crazy. And it's not even about, I don't even think that, like Jan is going to get smashed. It's more so if Jackie Love can just keep Jan down and Jan doesn't get the leads that he clearly was able to get in the KC series, I think TL is going to really struggle.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that I'd be worried about. And then, like people have talked about Umti at length. Umti sometimes wins you games, sometimes loses you games. He's just Umti. That's just what he does.
Let's be honest, though. Hold on a second. Let's be honest. Did mid and jungle really help bot lane, or did bot lane just win on their own? I think there's room for improvement, is what I'm trying to say. And if they bring it to TES, like their jungle and mid, I think they can make some magic.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a point, right? Like, it's going to be harder to beat Jackie Love and Crisp. And Jackie Love's an elite AD. And I think that for me, there's a big disparity between international fans and domestic fans of the LPL and how people view Jackie Love. Because if you're a true LPL fan, you're going to view Jackie Love as the player that doesn't really make the same mistakes anymore that he did when he was starting off as a player. I feel like he's really gotten those out of his system. Like, they still happen, but this guy is just an elite AD now. And as good as Jan is playing, taking down Jackie Love is a really, really tough ask. I think the best hope for TL, again, is I really didn't like how Top Esports drafted in the Hanwha. And that's something where TL can abuse. I think that a big part of TL finding the 3-0 against 100 Thieves was they really took advantage of some mistakes that 100 Thieves made in draft and had some really good drafts that not only fit the game, but fit what their players wanted to do as well. And I did like how TL drafted yesterday. So, like, for me, that's actually probably the biggest hope or the boon that I would bring into that series. But if I had to put a percentage on it, like, in theory, because we're not going to talk about this tournament until the next Hotline League, I give TL pretty decent odds to being the 3rd seed. If they are the 3rd seed, then hopefully, they're going to draw Top Esports. I think that Hanwha should be the 1 seed, and they're likely heavy favorites. If they play a best of 5 against Top Esports, based on what I've seen so far, I'd probably give TL a 25% chance to win that versus Top. Whereas if it's against Hanwha, it's less than 5%. Again, I think Hanwha they don't drop more than 3 games in this tournament.
Question.
How I view Hanwha.
Question for you, Cubby. Would you increase it if I said Core JJ and Impact have beaten Jackie Love in international tournament before? 2019 MSI, let's go Liquid.
I love that. I do. And I will say that I thought a big part of this tournament was I feel like when you look at the teams that the region sent, for the most part, I felt like top and support were the most important roles. Given that was a big part of swaps, but I feel like when I look at the teams in the tournament, I look at the tops and the supports from the region, and they're all top 1, top 2, top 3 for the most part. And I really felt that way about Impact and Core. So I thought that they played pretty well last night. But again, I think 369 is I don't know. I don't think I can say Impact favors, but I don't think it's like you get smoked. 369 domestically was actually, I think, a big part of the reason why top won. And then Crisp is a bit of a flipper, but Crisp is going to have games where it's good and bad flips, kind of like Umti. Overall, I think Chris is actually playing really well. I thought he was the 2nd best support, and then Kyle was playing the best in LPL, and he beat Kyle to get here. So, yeah,
dude, I love base Kyle. Shout out, man! I'm so sad we lost that. I'm so sad we lost that guy to the LPL.
He's playing really well.
I know, and the support pool in the LCK is I'm going off topic, but
it's way better than LPL. Yeah.
Oh no, I think we needed Kyle, honestly.
Oh yeah, no, I think so too. Kyle's been really good. I know that you that was the Live Sandbox when I was on the TV, and that was a very fun split
TV
of
man.
Kyle Prince. Yes, very fun split.
No, I you know what? I think I like the Hopium angle caller. I like the historical throwback as well. Always respect that. I think realistically, the odds that Kobe gave, I'd kind of be aligned with those. I think that they're definitely. I think the beauty of League, and we've seen this, and especially in a best of 3, I feel like it's even more prevalent. I feel like in a best of 5, it's a lot harder. But in a best of 3,
I give them 35% best of 3, 25 best of 5. Yeah.
I feel like that's valid.
You know what I'll say? That's better odds than we had back in 2019, where everybody else voted against.
Not wrong. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, what would it like? Okay, that was obviously your TL made finals. How significant would it be for Team Liquid to make finals at this tournament? Because this is the first time we've seen First Stand. It's honestly not that different from like MSI many years ago, where there was only one team coming from each region. So I'm just curious from on both fronts from both of you, how prestigious it is to make finals at an event like this. Chronicler's wincing.
Yeah, it's so because I think that the problem with a lot of these narratives, right? Like Cubby's example of Jackalov is a really good one. I think NA versus EU is another one. Obviously, that one gets obfuscated a little bit because of how little actual head-to-head there is. And I know the head-to-head is very far in favor of NA over the last 2 years, but like the more the better, right? In terms to get a good, reliable sample size. Narratives take so long to kind of shift around. I don't think realistically it's going to make a really big difference, even if TL do make it. And then they get, because what realistically will happen then, right? Like say that they don't go for the actually win. Actually winning, I think, would be completely different.
Yeah.
But say that they get 3-0.
Hanwha? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But say that they get 3-0 by Hanwha Life, right? People are, I don't think, going to look at them that differently, even though realistically they should, because 3 years ago, an NA team making it to finals would be crazy. But I think it will kind of be a replay of what happened in 2019, where no one actually looks at TL in a positive way because they then got kind of clapped afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't
series of all time at the time.
Exactly. Which I don't think is fair, but I think that's just how it works. It takes a long time to kind of work through.
Yeah, because then it's not
narratives.
Team Liquid was good. It's top collapse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like what you...
sorry.
Go caller now.
Which I was going to say, which brings me to my last point, which is that both Core and Impact have this tragic experience, and they won't want to feel that pain again. So they will be hungry, and they'll bring their top shape.
I will say it, if there's a team under Spawn that's not hungry, then they're not on the team. So I feel like these guys have always been hungry. I like what Chronicler, what you said about like narratives and taking a long time to catch up. I feel like for the average viewer, it wouldn't matter a ton unless TL like plays Hanwha really competitively. I think that for TL, I've also like kind of called the split a novelty split. Like it's a new condensed international tournament and format. Like this is the least prestigious, if we're being honest, of all the events. It's a format that at the moment is different than the rest of the year. But
it's just meant to be like a small thing, right? Like it's not meant to be more.
Yeah. For TL though, I think it would matter a lot to them, because for TL, like they were the team for me where they were where a lot of NA's hopes were at before they lost to FlyQuest in finals and before people kind of saw what FlyQuest was doing. And they were the ones that, were able to take games off T1. They looked rather competitive at EWC. They didn't have the worlds that they wanted to. And I think that having a tournament where if you were to take down a top esports, if you were to be like, be a competitive 4 or 5 game series against Hanwha, I feel like then that would be a lot of vindication for the run back and adding Swiffer and building up confidence as to like, hey guys, we felt like we were here like less than a year ago. We're back. Like, can we push further than that? Like now, I feel like that would kind of matter to them. So
that'd be so amazing. That'd be so amazing.
Thank you so much for calling in, Kaz. Is there anything you want to shout out?
No, just shout out all of you and all of your sponsors. And I love the show. I always listen in, and excited for MSI as you mentioned. If you do come down, would love to get a photo. Anyways, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, I will definitely be in Vancouver. It does not matter if I have sponsors or not. I love that city so much. I have a bunch of friends there, and I love when League of Legends is in Canada. The Canadian fans are always amazing, and they deserve much more attention than they get. So thanks so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Have a good night. Thank you.
All right, we got 2 more callers, but we're going to take a quick break first to talk about our second sponsor of the evening, which is none other than NZXT. I'm really excited to talk about something that they are going to be doing. It's coming up. It starts on the 14th, so just 4 days away from when we do this. They're going to be doing something called Caseathon, which is going to be a really cool event where for an entire month they are going to be doing. Fans will be able to get exclusive access to giveaways and sales offers for NZXT cases. Ugh, NZXT cases, and the streams will feature special guests from NZXT. Offers will go live starting on March 14th. So they're going to have all this happening. You can go check out their Discord where they will have an event announcing all the different things that are going on. There'll be additional incentives like the points that they have that you get just for tuning in, and there's going to be all sorts of really neat things happening. So they're going to be doing big giveaways. All this stuff is going to be going on again from March 14th to April 4th. Again, unique live stream series where they'll be talking about NZXT cases, PC building, engaging with the NZXT community. They'll be doing Q&As, giveaways, discounts, all these types of things with special guests. So thank you so much to NZXT for sponsoring the stream. I think it's a great time for you to be able to go over there, learn a little bit more about their cases, and maybe end up getting one given away through that, or maybe take advantage of one of the discounts that they'll be having going on this time. So shout out to NZXT for hosting Caseathon. Really excited to see that take place again between March 14th and April 4th. So starting this week, tune into NZXT, and hopefully you'll be able to win something. So thanks to NZXT for sponsoring the show. All right, we got 2 more calls to go, and then we'll be winding down. Cubby's going to run off and grab the next caller. Big shout out over on YouTube to Eddie, who's the first person to do the membership thing over on YouTube tonight. Renewed for 4 months. Thank you to Eddie for being a YouTube member. And Josh for the $10 super chat over on YouTube. Says, anytime NA has success, it's painted as the opposition falling short, never us rising up. That's true with our success against EU, and it will be even true if we manage to win this event. I don't know about that. I think if we win this, people will have to come around, but maybe that's just some copium on my end. So, but thank you everybody for sponsoring or for supporting the sponsors, but also through supporting the live streams through super chats, memberships, Twitch subs, all that good stuff. Chronicler, I wish I was over there because I really like Korea too. I miss Seoul. It's been too long.
Yeah, Korea's awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. Would have been good.
Yami is here. Yami, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Okay, so I'm calling in to... Okay, it's Hotline League, so I gotta be hyperbolic. The UI change that they've implemented for this tournament is the worst thing to happen to League of Legends in, I don't know, like at least the past week.
Yeah.
Since lane swaps.
Yeah.
No, I'm a lane swap enjoyer. Khan was 100% right in his call.
Since Hextech Chess, you know. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm calling in because, especially as an NA viewer, I'm watching First Stand with my boys at 4 a.m. and we're very tired, and we have this horrible UI that obscures all of this information. So as our extremely exhausted brains are trying to put everything together, we have to do all this mental math to look at all these little elements that blend into each other because the CS number is almost the same color as the I don't know, the background that it's on. The dragon isn't up most of the time because I have to cycle through all of the different creeps and the I don't know, what is it? It's the creeps, it's the feats of strength, and then there's one other thing that they're cycling through there. The kills are all the way off sequestered in the corner. We were again, true story, very tired. Didn't notice that it was a 20-2 game in the first game until literally the last minute because the kills are just not in your frame of view. The goal diff between players is completely obfuscated, unlike on I think every overlay, at least the LCS overlay. I think every other region...
They kind of formalized that in the last few years because LEC had it first, but yeah.
So it's really hard to at a glance see what the head-to-head for different players are. you can calculate the team gold because they do show that, but it just makes it really hard to tell, like, okay, is Kana actually ahead? Because it feels like he should be ahead versus Impact, and then when he's on Jace versus Impact's Ornn, but then you look and you can't see his XP, you can't see his gold, you just see that he's been getting like 7 plate solo, but then all of a sudden you look and he's 2 levels below Impact, and you have no idea what happened because the entire game you can't see his XP or his gold. And so I guess kind of like the TLDR is it hides so much information that's useful as a viewer for analyzing the game, and it just makes for a worse viewing experience because you're not able to really easily understand what's happening. You have to spend a lot of time trying to analyze when you would prefer to be focusing on the game. And also, like, as a North American fan, it kind of sucks because I'm not trying to do all that math 4 a.m.
So, okay, here's my sadness around the situation. All the way back in 2017, when I worked at Yahoo, I worked with Corey Lulu, for those that know that name. Corey Lulu of Reddit posting fame.
Reddit fame.
Is literally a guy who works on, and I think he's comfortable with me saying this because we gave him credit at the time, who works on creating UI elements for traditional sports broadcasts. And God, I'd have to go back and find the video. I probably should have at some point in time around this topic. And he actually came in and did a redesign on the broadcast UI, because I've always felt as though the broadcast UI, and it was worse in the past, but I have felt as though the broadcast UI did too much trying to mimic the in-game experience. And I know that sounds ironic because people are like, oh, we play the game, we want it to look similar to what's going on in the game or whatever. But it's like, ultimately, I've been frustrated that UI has covered a lot of the screen during gameplay. I feel like they could rotate through different pieces of data more frequently so that they have more space on the screen. And I did not like that the information for the game was so often displayed in that upper panel in the middle. I actually think it's a good thing that it was off on the side, because if you're thinking about where the action takes place from a spectator perspective, the action is taking place in the middle of the screen. So having UI elements up at the top that block that, I think, is bad. Whereas, like, usually the way action is being framed in the game, it's not in like a top corner or something along those lines. So I was always, this is strangely enough been a thing that's been like an 9-year-long opinion piece for me. And I remember when we released that video, people were basically like, meh. I thought it was going to be revolutionary. We were going to be like, oh, this is so smart. And look at these other examples of UI elements. And this is so great. And the community was just like, bleh. And so that was when I was like, okay, maybe I'm just the only person that cares about this or whatever. So when they announced that they were going to be doing a new HUD or UI or whatever for like this event, and hopefully it would be adopted elsewhere, I was like, this is going to be really good, because I think that I've always felt like it would be really important for Riot to go through and say, hey, if we were just designing a HUD for the sport today, not thinking about any of the information that has like been previously available or that you usually get whenever you're playing a game of League of Legends, how would we go about doing it? I just thought that would be really sick. And it's quite frankly the type of thing that I thought that they would have done back in like 2018, 2019, when they were just throwing a ton of money at the esport, and not something that they would be doing in 2025, when it feels like they're mostly trying to figure out like how to make things very easy and simple. And so I'm surprised that they did this. And so I was very enthusiastic about it. And I am heartbroken that it has been something that has been poorly received by the community, not because I necessarily think that the community is incorrect on any of their opinions about it, but just because I really, really, really am worried that the response is going to be, all right, fuck it, that was a failure, just revert back. And then we'll just be, they'll never change anything about it again. So, yeah, this is actually ironically something that I'm very passionate about, and something that, I was really disappointed. And I do think a little bit of the criticism is overblown, because I think some people get annoyed. I think what is happening is you're kind of getting the snowball effect, where people get annoyed about some things with it, and then they go, I don't like change. Just make it go back to the way it was. And then they start criticizing things about it that I think maybe aren't that offensive.
Are
Like,
you,
I
are
don't
you
think it's crazy
saying
to have the
that?
information on the top left. Go ahead,
Are you
Chronicler.
saying that social media feeds into a negative feedback loop, and you just get rewarded for being more and more negative about the thing, even though the initial qualms were valid? That would
Yes.
never happen.
I think
Come
that
on, come
might
on,
be
Travis.
what I'm insinuating here. I mean, dude, it's just crazy because I was watching the games last night and I was watching over on YouTube, and people in the YouTube chat was like, "Fire whoever made this," and I'm just like,
Well, that's excessive.
"Yeah,
Well, it's dumb.
So
it is." I mean, we can all agree it's excessive, but
well,
I just, yeah,
Because I costed with it yesterday, right?
yeah.
I did not. I think it was better in the second game. I did not feel like I had a good time. I want to echo.
I have empathy for you being in that situation. Wow.
It was
hard.
because already like it's EU versus NA, right? Like it's an international, so there's a lot more pressure. I think I made a lot of statements in that first series that normally I could have made. So just to lift a little bit behind the curtain, with casting, often you'll be starting a statement and then kind of building it as you go because everything is live, right? And you kind of need to keep going. You can't just have any dead air. Well, you can, but it needs to be used very deliberately. In a tricast, you can't really do that. And so many times, as I noticed yesterday, as a cast, you would make a statement and then kind of fill in further details by looking at all the information that was available. And then you just couldn't do that because I had to wait for the rotation. And I do think that in due time, this HUD will be great. I don't think Riot's going to cut it. I think that they've been very open, both publicly, but also for us, with like, please give us any feedback that you have. And I think in the long run, this might actually end up being one of those things where everyone will be like, okay, this is actually great now. And that's the only way that you can really, you have to go through different design iterations.
Yeah.
But particularly, I think there's a lot of, to get very specific with, there's a lot of symmetry in the HUD. It doesn't need to be there. Like Otacon score or Baron scores, like we don't really need to know how many Barons each team have taken, right? It just looks nice on the graphic.
Yeah.
Whereas actually knowing at any time what item someone has or how many dragons have been taken is so big because teams will legitimately plan their next couple of minutes around, are we on 2 dragons? Are they on 2 dragons? Are we on 1 dragon? Are they on 3 dragons?
Yeah.
When are we hitting our item spike? Are we almost approaching 2? So as a caster, reading the game state in its current iteration, I thought was really hard. I don't think my co-casters were as spotted as I was, but for me that was really rough. But I do think in due time, and I expect even over the course of this week, we'll probably see a really big improvement in that UI. And there are a lot of problems with the old UI that I think can be fixed with this.
Let me ask really quickly. Sorry, just as a quick aside before we Cubby. When you say that, like, I understand why you as a caster need immediate access to every bit of information in that moment. Like in my mind, there should just be a second screen that is like near one of your screens that just has, that is only information, and quite frankly information that isn't even in the old HUD, that is just like relevant to you. And I can't think of, you would know more than I what that should be, but I would.
Well, that's just having access to Tournament Realm. Like if you just have a PC logged into Tournament client, like to the actual in-game client, because stuff like rune damage, like item damage, specific rune setups, because obviously they show them for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
If that, but it's like it's 10 players, right? And sometimes you want to check specific interactions.
Yeah, you can click around.
You can find all of that in when you're actually in game in the tournament client.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like for background, at least the few times I've gotten to cast in the studio, like I have a monitor where I can hop in the game on my own. Yeah. And then I can also pull up like notes and stats, which I have most like in a notebook. But if I want to look up stuff on the fly, I can do that too. So like, yeah, you have to be in the client to have all that info. Yeah. Dude, you guys have anything else to add before I knock out like some low-hanging fruit here?
No, go for it.
All right, low-hanging fruit, like complaints that I think are very valid. First off, why is this being debuted now? Like I feel like this should be something that is either at the start of the year or the start of Split 2. And I get like when they debut it and have feedback. Like, why is it debuted at the start of an international event? I really didn't get that. So I feel like that opened them up to a lot of criticism, because I think that what you guys mentioned with just change. I literally tweeted out earlier in the week that I know I'm old because I just get bummed when UI changes. Like that was based on Discord changing the call UI that you have. It's like, why do they make this? Like, why is it squares and not circles, which Discord has always had, right? I like a few other things that are really frustrating for me. And also like some of the criticisms, I think the old HUD like got iterated on a lot. Like, for example, experience was something that they had to add. And that was a huge add. But like that, keystones being on the portraits and everything, like all that was added over time. So it's not like they can't change this. Like I thought that the KDAs and the CS, like being where they're at, doesn't make sense. The health bars on the HUD are as big and sometimes bigger than like when it goes to the side panel portrait. The health bars were bigger there than on screen. Also, the HUD isn't completely like 100% synced up to the game. So like that's an issue. The player cams being smaller. Like there's been so much emphasis and focus on player cams and focusing on the players, the reaction, and for that to be smaller and like off-centered was really weird. There are a lot of things that like can be changed. I think that my biggest thing was, by the way, the top left score bug, I actually like. I'm with you, Travis. I just think the order of information is dumb. Like it implies that towers are the most important thing. That's just not the case in the game, right? And I think the rotating info is also annoying from a caster perspective. So I feel like if they do a better job of representing that, it's fine. The timers all being top right was actually kind of nice. So it's not like it's all bad. I just don't get why they debuted it now. And then also, my biggest beef was that when it got out of the just like the lower bug itself, and then got into like the two side panels, I actually like how you can
team fight HUD.
Yeah, like you can see items in there, but the health bars are ginormous. Like, it was too big, and it took up way too much information, or like way too much space, where the information was more important than the action. And like for me, it's nice to have items there, but I actually like when that all goes away and like you really focus on what's going on. Like, yes, it might be nice to know that they have like this jungler has the Andres and the other one doesn't have a full item yet. But you can figure that out like in the back half or call that out, right? It's not having that all up on the screen was really distracting. And like just because of when this debuted and how it did, it took away importance from a very, very important game and internet. Like devalued their own international event by debuting it then instead of finding a time to debut this like at the start of a season.
And
yeah,
it's also what might be the only EU versus NA game we get the whole tournament, right?
Yeah.
Like if everything goes according to expected outcome.
Yeah. So I felt like it was just a big miss to have it now, and I'm okay with the UI not being perfect. I'm frustrated that the changes they made are more intrusive than the last one. I think that's the biggest frustration that I have. Like it was more intrusive with less info, and
so
that that's just anti-design.
I've pulled up what we did in 2017. I'm sorry that I was playing it through yourself. Ignore old Travis. But this was one of my main arguments at the time, which is like the UI takes up so much. And now obviously this is stripped away of like the cameras and the sponsorship stuff, which they would have to have. But this was one of the solutions that we posited in 2017, which is when people are talking about items or whatever, and obviously, you know, I know this is weird on the caster side, you have to figure out a way to communicate that, but like they expand and pop up. You have like some of the information over on the left. It rotates. You can see that like the gold and kills and all that stuff is changing and the bottom left at times. But this was always what I had envisioned as a change, is like, let's see more of the game. What's very funny is you can also tell that I'm pretty sure this is before. I mean, obviously it's just a normal game in the background, but like they also at one point in time many years ago zoomed out the camera a ton for spectator experience, so you could see a lot more stuff. But yeah,
you didn't know Control Shift Z yet. It's all right.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
I mean, again, I think that something less intrusive, and I will say I like the top left score bug. I actually think that that's like a fine change. I'm okay with that. Like I saw it and instantly thought of baseball, ironically, because like that's just how they do it. But I will say that like even that takes up space. It's like more important than just the line up top. I get it. If it was a top lane view, the top left score bug actually made a lot of sense, just because like that's dead zone on the map. But then when it showed like a grub fight, I couldn't see the setup if a team was entering through top lane, and that's like way, way, way more important. So like a lot of the importance, at least in the space that you have for League, and why I think it's best to have it on the top bar. A lot of the action, especially with how important objective setups go, are actually along the river. And so when you have it in the top left, that's going to be really distracting and cover up important info. A lot of points like where you have the camera. So again, like your observer actually has to fundamentally change how they observe the game. And the top bar for me is actually less distracting because a lot of times, like when you zoom out, that's going to be over like the red side jungle. Whereas that top box, or like when they did that, like that's actually taking up important info on the screen. Like that's why I like the portraits that were so much smaller and less distracting being up. And they were synced up with like what's going on in the game, which is something like they can fix later. But again, when something like a change is made and I see it's more intrusive and brings less value, then obviously like yes, this can be iterated on, but like that's just not a good first attempt. And I don't get why they chose to debut it at the international event.
I'm sure it was because that was when they had it in development timelines. Like,
yeah.
Again, yes, but like I mean, you could just use the LCK like HUD. Like the LCK one looked the best outside of the LTA one this last split. I felt like I praised the LTA HUD they had, the upgrades they made. I felt like the way they showed feats was actually the best format. I really like the LCK they showed roses. Like that was missing too. I thought that was a great change they made, like addition going into this year. Like that matters, especially because we have the other version of Otacon spawning more often on this patch. And if you kill that and kill the roses, it's worth like a half a level or more, sometimes a full level. So yeah, I didn't like, again, when you make a change and it is more intrusive and offers less clarity, then no matter how it looks or the frustration that a viewer is going to have with overcoming just the change itself, it's a bummer. And I feel like that's where a lot of fans were at on Twitter, and I resonated with that. And for me, it took away from the experience of the games itself. And these are important games, and it's like, oh, it's just a part of the dev cycle. Just do it at the start of Split 2. It makes way more sense to like actually have a split look different for the majority of it, and you're doing it for regular season games where you can iterate on it and have it be good by the time you actually get to events that are important like this. So yeah, I feel like Riot really missed with this one.
Yeah. All right. Now that we've officially dogged on the UI a ton, Yami, thanks so much. Anything you would add to this? I know we kind of just like took the ball and ran with it.
I don't necessarily know if I would add like there's tons of little kind of minute criticisms I had that kind of go into like what you were saying of the like once you kind of notice something wrong, you start noticing more and more and more stuff. But I didn't really think it was productive to bring those up. I take the point about there being stuff that could change about the UI, that they're making it just stay similar to the in-game UI because that's what people are used to and like people don't like change. I don't necessarily think that's a weakness of it, because I think like it is true that a lot of people who watch League, not everybody, but a lot of people, probably the vast majority, do play League of Legends and are used to finding information in that way. And the trade-off that you make by cutting off like a little bit of the top part of the screen is not that big, especially considering like it is actually easier to maneuver around kind of like a border around all edges of the screen as like observing versus stuff that's kind of randomly in the middle of the screen. The comfort that you get for viewers just being able to like instantly know where to find information, I think is not necessarily something that should be discounted. And yes, that would change with time, I think, a little bit, assuming they find a way to just keep the stuff like the dragons and the feats all up at once or in a way that it's more easily accessible. But I think the fact that it is easily intuitive to people who are looking at it is a point in its favor, when its goal is to be unobtrusive, is to just be, you're able to get this information without thinking about it, not to be like a pretty kind of more kind of like aesthetically pleasing, better laid out thing. If you're thinking about having to find information on the UI, I think the UI is not doing the job of the UI, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
I would like to shout out TL for putting on a good show and, reminding everybody that NA greater than EU. I want to shout out, I guess, also TL. Race to World First is happening right now, and TL Guild has been doing pretty well. They were the first guild to kill Strix, the trash guy. I don't remember the proper name. Yesterday, so that was pretty cool. This is kind of passive aggressive, but shout out to Cubby for being like the only one to ever pronounce my name consistently right. It's Yami, not Yami.
Well, Yami,
Cubby
thanks so much
always
for the
gets
call, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you very much.
All right. We got one last call to go, and it's from someone who just super chatted. Icebreaker Mints, thanks for the $10 super chat. Also, shout out to Insert Coin, who's keeping his sub going despite some unfortunate financial news this week. So thank you, Insert Coin. Haru, thank you for the 30 months. Jaffe 58, thank you for the 50 months. Really appreciate it. Disco Cisco, thank you as well. Thanks everybody for all the subs. We had a bunch come through all at once. So we've got Cubby coming in just now with Icebreaker, who just sent out a $10 super chat. Again, thank you, Icebreaker. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Indianapolis, Indiana. Happy Tuesday.
Indianapolis, Indiana. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so I'm the OQ take. I started following it 2 weekends ago via Cubby's Red Zone. And it's been super fun. And kind of my take on the whole, near airport potentially pulling out is like that's gonna be really sad if that's how this OQ cycle is remembered. We had excellent moments such as a Plat Aatrox carrying against a team of Grandmasters. This past weekend we had North America's first 5-game Fearless series. We actually had one. It wasn't LTA who had it first. It was NACL OQs, and that was really cool. The gameplay got a little scuffed, but it was very fun to watch. And so it's I think it's it feels bad if Near Airport makes it through and then leaves. These are 5 ex-pros, or mostly ex-pros, who have been in the league scene before. They know what the potential time commitment that they're signing up for is, and to have them suddenly realize this halfway through the qualifying tournament that this might not be something that they want to do, especially when some people look to them as role models in the scene, just feels kind of bad.
Chronicler, how plugged in are you into all of this? Because I know now we're going into tier 2.
I've mostly lived vicariously through Cubby on this, and some of the other NACL guys like Mazel, the usual suspects.
Yeah.
So I don't really have as strong a take. I'm just I'm the challenger guy for a reason. I think that secondary leagues being healthy is a big deal. But I think outside of that, I don't really have too much of a perspective to offer.
So the background that the caller is kind of coming in about, for chatters that don't know, is Doublelift. He made a team near airport. Is TF Boyd, Spica, Pobelter, Jensen was subbing, and then Doublelift and Biofrost, and they entered NACL OQs with the purpose of trying to qualify for NACL, and therefore also qualify for LCS or LTA North potentially. At the end of the year, if they were to win NACL and play in the promo relegation tournament. There was a clip that Doublelift had where he said that we are considering whether we are going to compete or not because we realize that this is a bigger time commitment than what we thought. It is kind of the TLDR. So obviously they're trying to do like Los Patones thing. I will say that I think the effort that Cadril has put in to that dwarfs any emulation I've seen so far. I mean, you have Cadril talking on Twitter this week how he's going to have people that track who chats in his channel, and if they are toxic in other channels or communities, and will ban them from both, which I can only imagine the lift on something like that, or the AI being used. Either way, I think that's like the fact that he is that invested and, going to the events, making jerseys and streaming all this, and NLC finals, by the way, had more viewership than the LTA North finals just because of this boost, and like what Cadrill's done is crazy. So you have people trying to emulate it, right? Whether it's the Rudy Sack or now Double Lift's team. Look, I think that Double Lift competing in NACL would be great for the league. It was great for OQs. They are good players. They entered the OQ. They won. They earned it. I hope they play. And really the only thing that I'll say about this is that if they entered, won, and don't take it, that is something that the 63 teams in the tournament would not even consider. And I know that because of their pedigree and what they do now, they definitely have privilege that those players would not. But again, this is something that you should have figured out before you're going to do this or not, whether you want to do NACL OQs. And if he does pull out, I feel like that would be a really big hit to the league, especially now that he's qualified. Also, saying that Casual isn't a player, the time commitment's different. That guy's been streaming everything like alongside like what the team's doing. He's been subbing in for everything. Like, I mean, yes, it is different, but also when you run a team that is an insane time commitment. So yeah, again, if Double Lift and like those guys, they want to do other stuff with their content. Obviously, they are content creators, and like you do this so that your content is better for when you do this. But yeah, they won. They entered the tournament. They won. I feel like they should just do it. And if they don't, then that is a privilege that, again, no one else that competed in OQs would even consider saying no to getting through that tournament.
I think it's obviously like there's the ethic ramifications regarding the other teams that you knocked out that don't get to compete and then you don't actually follow through. But also just from a basically what you're doing by competing in this tournament is you're generating value for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the reason why. It's because the idea is to generate hype through competing and then they make money off of it. I think it's really in bad faith to then do that and not even go through the, like, I understand why you wouldn't want to follow all the way through, like, and then if you end up because I can understand how having an LTA team would be a further step beyond, but like NACL, I think implicitly when you enter the tournament you enter an agreement, and I don't know what the actual agreement is with this. That's also something I'd be interested in, because there will be some sort of contract that you'd have to sign, I imagine, or like an agreement you have to enter to join.
Because they won, 5 out of 5 players have to play week 1 of NACL.
So that's okay. Yeah, so that's also one. That's okay. But then I'm also wondering, on one end, it's obviously them pulling out is I think kind of a shitty move. But then let's also flip that around. Why is their legal obligation not covering at least an entire split? Because it should, right? Like, they get the benefit of playing in this tournament. They have to enter into this agreement. Why does that not cover at least a split? Like, drop out after a full split, but don't get the opportunity to just dip out after like a week.
I mean, again, this should have been figured out beforehand. And I know that he's realizing that they can't just like walk their way through it. I mean, I find that hilarious because it really shows how out of touch these guys are with tier 2. The fact that they thought that they could just like, show up and play and win, then that'd be crazy. Anyway, someone's saying that he responded to the Reddit thread on stream after winning. That doesn't add context.
So I
hope they play again. I do. They just should have figured this out beforehand. Like, there should not even be a conversation.
I was listening to a podcast this week. I don't really follow the poker scene, but Phil Hellmuth, who I guess is one of the most successful poker players of all time, has said that he's not going to be competing in the World Series of Poker this year, despite I guess he's played in every event since 1988, which is before I was born. People who say things about how I'm old, and they like the podcast hosts who are big poker people were like, yeah, he's definitely going to play. And I kind of feel like that's what's going to happen here. I don't know. I would be very surprised if he actually does walk away from it. We'll see. But the fact that they qualified and all that stuff, I feel like this is just Peter being Peter and speaking, probably having been exhausted from competing for a full weekend and being like, oh, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like he'll actually do it. So, I'm not saying it's a good look that he's handling it the way he is, but I feel like,
yeah, again, it'd be great for the league. Like, I just think that if you enter this, then you should enter it with the purpose of, competing at the level that you feel like, you can. And if you win, go further. Because again, like no other team in the tournament would even consider not competing at NACL if they got through. Like that is what you sign up for. So I feel like this got blown out of like proportion a lot because obviously it's double lift and it's big. And there was like the whole conversation about like, oh, like if you can't beat them, like you don't deserve to play. It's like I mean, I agree with that. They're in the tournament. If you can't beat them, then you don't deserve to get through, regardless if it's double lift or not. Anyone has the right to enter and compete. But that was the takeaway, and not the fact that like, again, no other my thing is no other team in the tournament would even think about turning this down. And like you have to, if you enter the tournament, you have to treat it with the same respect, which I hope he does, and I hope they compete. It'd be fun. It would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope he does. I think he probably will. I've been trying to figure out a time to do an interview with him and maybe some of the other players, so hopefully I get a chance to do that before I leave this week. It's kind of in motion right now, but we wanted to do something before the open qualifiers, and then we didn't want to do something during the open qualifier, so hopefully we get a chance to do something now that it's after. So we will see how things go, but yeah, I guess we'll see. Icebreaker, anything else you wanted to chime in on the open qualifier stuff?
Yeah, I believe next weekend, lower bracket wraps up, Cubby. Is that correct?
Yes, it's all done by the end of next weekend.
Yeah.
There are 10 teams left competing for one slot, which is quite the banger, I must say.
Yeah, so, I guess that's kind of a shout out to anyone who wants to watch that finish. Cubby has been, hopefully, are you co-streaming it next weekend as well?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Awesome. Yeah, chat, tune into Red Zone. It's like NFL Red Zone. It also has ads.
Thanks, Icebreaker, for the call, and we'll catch you next time. All right, that is the show. Thank you so much to Chronicler for coming in last minute on this. That was really fun to catch you in chat. We had somebody who was lined up. They unfortunately had to drop out, I think, for maybe some personal reasons or whatever. I didn't pry, but and we were trying to figure something out. And again, I just did not expect you would be available because I figured, I don't know, I guess I'm bad at thinking about time zones and all that type of thing. I just imagine you'd be in an office somewhere.
I also it's my day off today, so.
Oh, today's your day off. Well,
but it starts in what, like 4 hours?
Yeah.
Tournament. So.
Yeah. Well, it's great. We'll do a round of shout outs here. Cubby, you want to start off?
Yeah. Shout out to Chronicler as always for joining us and always doing banging work. Shout out to OQs. It's been a lot of fun, and tune in next weekend. Having 10 teams compete for one slot is wild. And then shout out to AMI, Fine Minis team, that made it through the OQs. It was a really fun match. Again, it was 10 players that have never, ever had a starting spot in NACL. And they played a best of 5, so you get in. So I feel like that's part of the fun of OQs. And hopefully it continues to be fun. And shout out to TL. Best of luck for them this upcoming week. I hope that we can talk about them maybe contesting HLE in a final or beating top esports when we have Hotline League again. So I'm rooting for TL.
Yeah. Chronicler, how about you?
Shout out to Carter Jepson. Please stream Emotion. Thanks for having me, and glad I could join you guys.
Wow, what is up? Have you heard of the new pop music?
Are you gonna push Olivia? Are you gonna pretend I don't know about Olivia Rodrigo? Is that what's happening here?
Sabrina Carpenter.
Sabrina.
Sounds like you know about Olivia Rodrigo.
Oh, have you heard about Sabrina? I've been on the internet, man. Like, yeah, I know about Sabrina Carpenter.
How about Chapel Roan?
Come on now.
With her?
Yes, I also know about. I knew. What is this? Come on now, step it up. Give me actually something that I'd want to listen to that I don't know. I love my pop girl music. Okay.
I think thank shame. God. Because did you know that when I tweeted this shit out, I don't know if you saw it, but whenever everybody was doing their Spotify Unwrapped, I tweeted out the joke, which was I always put work first because my top 5 artists were number 1 League of Legends, then Sabrina Carpenter, then Olivia Rodrigo, then Chapel Roan, then Charlie XCX. And I had people on, like, it was like a political divide where both sides were very upset at me. I had like the anti woke DEI people all being like, you have a low T count, Travis. And then I had the other side of people
Me
being
too,
like,
dude.
yeah, low T count. And then I had the other side of people being like, oh, this is like you want to talk to like 17-year-olds or whatever. And so I was just like, God damn, like can't I just like this music, you know? I had a bunch of people saying like this is stuff that like 14-year-old girls listen to. I'm like, have you listened to this fucking music? Like, I don't know if they should be listening to
Well,
it.
I mean,
And
they're not wrong, Travis, but you just have to not let that get
Dude,
to you. It doesn't matter.
Charlie
Who
XCX's
cares?
music is all about doing coke. Like,
Yeah.
Chaperone's got lines
that's a bit different.
about getting
Olivia
eaten out in
Rodrigo
the
is
front
teenage
seat
girl
of her
music.
car. You know,
And that's okay.
I mean,
you can just
Guts was a great album.
I'm not
you
saying
can just like teenage girl music. That's fine.
Guts should have won the Grammy that year.
You know, like Justin Bieber was overhated. He had a lot of great songs. It's fine. It's okay.
I want to give a shout out to PN for the $5 super chat and then the $20 super chat afterwards. And then I do want to give a shout out to Sabrina Carpenter because last week I bought tickets to multiple of her shows because she reannounced another leg to her tour in November of this coming year. So I'll be seeing her in LA. And Numi was very distressed at the amount of tickets that I purchased. I don't know if she conveyed that to you, Cubby, but we'll see. Either way, thanks to everyone for watching this episode of Hotline League. I'll be in Florida this weekend and flying back on Monday, so we'll probably have to do the show on Tuesday. But I will see you all then. Tune into First Stand, and also Cubby and I will probably do another episode with our friends of the Prediction Show. So stay tuned for that as we do all these things as First Stand goes on. Thanks again to Chronicler, and we'll see you all next week.